In the warm, shallow waters off northern Australia, the ocean looks deceptively inviting. The surface is flat, turquoise glass under a sky washed in light, broken only by the occasional ripple of a breeze or the flicker of a silver fish. But just beneath this clarity, an invisible threat drifts with the currents, soft, silent, and barely perceptible even to a trained eye. This is the realm of the box jellyfish, an animal so delicate in form that it often escapes detection until it is far too late. Unlike their more flamboyant jellyfish cousins, box jellies don't pulse in lazy spirals or put on bioluminescent displays. They glide. Their movements are eerily controlled, tentacles trailing behind like fine fishing lines, transparent bells shaped like cubes with slightly rounded edges. Up to 60 tentacles can stream from each corner of their bell, and each one can stretch to nearly 10 feet in length. These filaments are the animal's deadliest weapons, laced with thousands of specialized cells called conidocytes, each housing a harpoon-like nematocyst loaded with potent neurotoxin. To the human eye, the box jellyfish is nearly invisible, a ghost in water. But to small fish and invertebrates, it's a drifting minefield. The jellyfish does not chase, it doesn't need to. It simply waits, allowing prey to drift into contact. A single brush against a tentacle can trigger a cascade of stings, each microscopic harpoon firing on contact, penetrating flesh in milliseconds. The venom works fast, paralyzing muscles, halting the heart, shutting down nerve signals. In smaller animals, death is nearly instantaneous. In humans, depending on exposure, symptoms can begin within seconds. Searing pain, rapid heart rate, breathing difficulties. In severe cases, cardiac arrest follows. Survival depends entirely on how quickly the victim can reach medical care and whether antivenom or treatment is available at all. Yet for all its lethality, the box jellyfish is not a predator in the traditional sense. It is an ambush feeder, relying on passive capture rather than pursuit. Its transparency is its greatest ally. Even in daylight, it's often invisible until it's dangerously close. At night, it continues its silent patrol, guided not by chance alone, but by an unexpected sense, vision. Unlike most jellyfish, box jellies possess true eyes, 24 in total, grouped into 4 rapallia located around the bell. These eyes include both simple light sensors and complex camera-type lenses. They can detect motion, shape, and brightness, giving the jellyfish an awareness of its environment unmatched among cnidarians. Scientists still debate how these signals are processed, as box jellies lack a centralized brain. But the coordination is undeniable. They can navigate around obstacles, avoid collisions, and even exhibit behaviors that suggest learning and memory. This visual ability allows the box jellyfish to actively position itself in optimal feeding zones. In mangrove shallows, it drifts near river mouths where nutrient-rich water draws juvenile fish in large numbers. During low tide, it retreats to deeper channels. When sunlight strengthens, it can move closer to shore, using shadows and turbidity to mask its presence. It's a methodical predator, using both sensory input and environmental awareness to maximize the chances of a meal. Juveniles, called ephyrae, hatch from polyps attached to submerged surfaces such as rocks or piers. The life cycle of a box jellyfish is complex, alternating between a sessile polyp stage and a free-swimming medusa. These polyps are incredibly resilient, able to regenerate and clone themselves under stress, making eradication or control efforts nearly impossible. A single polyp can produce dozens of medusae, which grow rapidly in the warm, plankton-rich waters of tropical coastal regions. Ironically, despite their ghost-like form, box jellyfish leave clear marks on their victims. Tentacle contact causes a distinctive ladder-like pattern of welts, raised, red tracks following the line of sting. Pain is immediate and overwhelming, described by survivors as burning through the bones. The venom contains multiple components: neurotoxins that shut down the nervous system, cardiotoxins that directly affect heart muscle, and dermonecrotic toxins that destroy skin and tissue. It is one of the few marine toxins known to affect multiple systems at once with such speed and severity. The most notorious species, Chironex fleckeri, can weigh up to 2 kilograms and stretch its tentacles more than 3 meters long. It's responsible for the majority of serious envenomations in Australia's coastal waters. Yet not all box jellies are killers. Some, like Cubozoa barnesi, linked to Irukandji syndrome, are tiny, barely the size of a grape, but still pack an excruciating sting. Irukandji syndrome is particularly deceptive. Victims often report only mild discomfort at first, followed by a delayed onset of systemic symptoms: full body pain, anxiety, nausea, hypertension. This delayed reaction makes diagnosis difficult, and the severity can vary widely between individuals. The sting of Chironex fleckeri, however, needs no delay to make its presence known. Fatalities can occur in under 5 minutes, and children are especially vulnerable due to their smaller body size. In response, many Australian beaches enforce seasonal closures, install protective netting, and station vinegar stations near lifeguard posts. Vinegar is the first line of defense, a common treatment to deactivate nematocysts that haven't yet fired. It doesn't relieve pain or reverse the effects of venom already injected, but it can prevent further injury during rescue. Box jellyfish are ancient survivors. Their lineage predates dinosaurs, and their methods haven't needed improvement in hundreds of millions of years. As much as humans fear them, we are not their targets. We're simply too large and accidental. But this fact doesn't offer much comfort to swimmers who unknowingly drift into their silent reach. In the end, what makes the box jellyfish so chilling is not just its venom, but its quiet perfection. It does not rage, roar, or chase. It simply floats, invisible and prepared. Its evolution is not flashy, but efficient, a distilled example of survival stripped to its most elegant and unforgiving form. There is no warning, no sound, no struggle, only a thin shimmer in the water, a trail of nearly invisible lines, and a sudden, unrelenting pain. Here in the tropics, where paradise meets peril, even the clearest waters can conceal a predator, and the box jellyfish, the ocean's venomous ghost, is waiting. Not with malice, just with method. In the tangled complexity of a coral reef at low tide, where sunlight pierces through shallow waves and the seafloor becomes a shifting mosaic of algae, rock, and shell, danger often comes not in motion, but in stillness. Here, beneath a thin veil of rippling water, lies one of the ocean's most dangerous creatures, not hunting, not chasing, not even moving. The stonefish. To most observers, it would appear as just another rock, its body textured with lumps, covered in algae, often flecked with sand, and pressed against the reef floor with such commitment to camouflage that even trained marine biologists occasionally miss it. It is not colorful, it does not pulse, and it rarely betrays its presence. But beneath that motionless, rock-like exterior are weapons primed for one of the fastest defensive strikes in the animal kingdom, and one of the most painful. Unlike predators that actively stalk prey or flash bright warnings, the stonefish specializes in reactive violence. It does not seek trouble, but it is prepared for it. Along its dorsal ridge are 13 stout spines, each connected to venom glands that secrete a complex heat-labile neurotoxin. These spines are not always visible. Most of the time they are recessed within the skin, hidden just beneath the surface. But if pressure is applied, such as by the foot of an unsuspecting swimmer or the probing mouth of a curious predator, they erupt upward with sudden force, penetrating flesh like thick needles and delivering venom directly into tissue. The result is excruciating pain, inflammation, and in severe cases paralysis, tissue death, or cardiac complications. There are documented cases of fatalities, but most injuries result in intense agony and long-term recovery, not death. Still, the experience is so traumatic that survivors often describe it as one of the most painful events of their lives, comparable to third-degree burns or the bite of a bullet and magnified many times over. The stonefish doesn't rely on its venom for hunting. Its prey, typically small fish and shrimp, are captured using a completely different tactic. The fish rests, almost buried, and waits. Its upward-facing eyes scan for movement, and when the shadow of a passing fish falls within range, the stonefish strikes with shocking speed. Its jaw flares open in a fraction of a second, creating a vacuum that sucks the prey into its mouth before it even realizes it's being hunted. This form of suction feeding is so rapid that high-speed cameras are required to capture the motion in detail. To the naked eye, the prey simply disappears. There is no chase, no pursuit. One moment of carelessness by the prey and it is gone. The stonefish doesn't even chew. It simply swallows whole and resumes its immobile posture. Its range extends across the Indo-Pacific, from the Red Sea to northern Australia, often inhabiting estuaries, tidal flats, coral rubble, and lagoons. In these environments, camouflage becomes not just a method of ambush, but a matter of survival. Juvenile stonefish are especially vulnerable and must blend in to avoid larger predators. Adults, on the other hand, face few natural threats. Large sharks and rays may attempt to consume them, but most predators learn to avoid the telltale shape after one painful encounter. Even the green sea turtle, known for its hardy diet, approaches with caution. The stonefish's venom, unlike that of many marine species, is not designed to immobilize prey, but to deter predators. It is primarily defensive, a chemical shield activated only when provoked. The toxin contains multiple active agents: stone-use toxin, which affects nerve transmission, verrucotoxin, which compromises blood flow, and trachinyllysin, a hemolytic protein that damages red blood cells. Together, they create a physiological storm that overwhelms pain receptors, disrupts circulation, and can lead to systemic shock. The venom is also thermolabile, meaning that it begins to break down under high heat, which is why hot water immersion is the standard first aid treatment. Submerging the injured area in water at around 45 degrees Celsius can reduce the severity of symptoms and help neutralize some components of the toxin. Still, treatment must be administered quickly, and in remote coastal areas without immediate access to medical care, even non-lethal stings can result in serious complications. What makes the stonefish particularly dangerous to humans is not its aggression, it has none, but its near-perfect mimicry of its surroundings. Unlike brightly colored warning species like lionfish or sea snakes, the stonefish gives no visual hint of its potency. In many tropical destinations, especially in areas with barefoot tourism or fishing, accidental stings are a seasonal risk. The fish is often stepped on while hidden in sand or nestled among rocks near shorelines, sometimes in water only ankle deep. Protective footwear and awareness are the best defenses, but even then, the stonefish's stealth is formidable. Interestingly, the fish's camouflage extends to more than just appearance. It can remain motionless for days, conserving energy and avoiding detection not just by predators, but by prey. Its slow metabolism allows it to go long periods without feeding, and its sturdy, compressed body resists the pressures of tidal fluctuation and wave action. Even its skin resists infection and abrasion, a useful trait when its primary defense is to hunker down in a dangerous, debris-filled environment. When threatened, it may flare its fins slightly or twitch, but this is rare. More often, it waits for the threat to make the first mistake. Despite their appearance, stonefish are not technically rockfish in the taxonomic sense. They belong to the family Cynanceaeidae and represent one of the most venomous genera of fish in the world. Several species are known, with Cynancea verrucosa being the most infamous due to its broad Indo-Pacific distribution and high frequency of human encounters. Some traditional fishers in Pacific Islands can identify the stonefish on sight, despite its camouflage, and incorporate avoidance strategies into their fishing routines. In some cultures, the fish is even consumed after careful removal of the venomous spines, although this practice is rare and requires precise knowledge to be done safely. Their reproductive behavior is not well documented in the wild, but observations suggest external fertilization, with females releasing eggs and males broadcasting sperm over them. The resulting larvae are planktonic, tiny, drifting with the currents until they settle into a substrate and begin the slow transformation into juvenile fish. During this early life stage, the stonefish is highly vulnerable and must quickly develop camouflage skills to survive. It is easy to think of the reef as a place of brilliant color, constant motion, and dramatic chase. But the stonefish challenges that idea. It is not fast, not beautiful, and not social. It is a solitary shape, etched into the landscape, waiting for the careless and the curious. Its body, like a biological landmine, exists at the intersection of biological innovation and environmental necessity. In an ecosystem shaped by light and competition, sometimes the most dangerous thing is what you can't see until it's too late. What sets the stonefish apart is not its lethality alone, but its role as a biological contradiction. A predator that hunts by stillness, a defender that kills when threatened, a master of deception that relies on invisibility rather than intimidation. It is not a creature that dominates the reef through presence or strength. It does so through adaptation, refinement, and patience. A rock with a pulse, a weapon that breathes. And in the chaotic architecture of the coral world, it remains one of the most successful ambush predators ever to evolve. Not because it moves, but because it doesn't have to. At first glance, it doesn't look like much. Just a bulky starfish, perhaps oversized with a jagged, uneven surface and strange coloration that shifts depending on where it lives. Muted purples, pale reds, dull greens. But in the quiet spaces between coral heads, where rubble collects and sediment swirls in the current, this creature exerts a destructive influence out of proportion to its slow, methodical movements. The crown-of-thorns starfish is not swift, loud, or visibly menacing. Its presence is gradual, quiet, and often overlooked until the reef around it has already begun to die. Underwater, the reefscape is alive with texture and sound. Tiny fish chatter in clicks and pulses, shrimp snap like static, water pushes softly across anemones and fans. Amidst this tapestry, the movement of a crown of thorns is almost imperceptible. Its body is covered in flexible tubular feet that grip and pull against the surface, allowing it to creep over rocks and coral with a slow persistence. It may take hours to cross a few meters, but its direction is purposeful. It's not simply crawling, it's hunting. The starfish feeds on hard corals, specifically the living polyps that form the colorful branching colonies that define tropical reefs. When it reaches a coral head, it arches its body and everts its stomach, literally turning its digestive organ inside out and pressing it onto the coral surface. Enzymes are secreted, tissue is liquefied, and the starfish slowly digests its prey externally, absorbing the coral's living tissue and leaving behind a pale, lifeless skeleton. Over time, a single crown-of-thorns starfish can consume several square meters of reef, and when outbreaks occur, when populations surge, entire reef systems can be stripped of color and vitality in weeks. What makes this animal even more concerning is its physical design. It is covered in long, sharp spines, tipped with venom. These spines are not passive decorations, they are active defenses. When disturbed, the starfish can contract its body slightly, raising its spines and releasing toxins through specialized glands. For predators or careless divers, the result is immediate. Contact with these spines causes intense pain, swelling, and in some cases nausea, vomiting, and persistent wounds. The venom is not lethal to humans, but the injury is memorable and often severe enough to require medical attention. For fish, especially opportunistic predators like pufferfish and triggerfish, the crown of thorns is a challenging meal. Some have developed techniques to flip the starfish over and attack the softer underside. But this strategy requires effort, timing, and immunity to the toxins, traits not all reef creatures possess. Even sea turtles, which feed on many invertebrates, rarely target adult crown of thorns due to their size and defenses. This gives the starfish a rare status among reef invertebrates. It is largely safe from predation once it reaches adulthood. Juveniles, however, face a very different reality. In their early stages, they are far smaller, often less than a centimeter across, and vulnerable to a wide range of filter feeders and small fish. During this time, they hide under rocks and in crevices, feeding on algae until they transition to a coral diet. Their reproduction is as dramatic as their feeding habits. A single female crown of thorns can release up to 60 million eggs in a single spawning season. These eggs, fertilized externally, develop into free-swimming larvae that drift with plankton for several weeks. During this phase, they are vulnerable to predation and ocean currents, but those that survive can settle onto the reef floor and begin the transformation into juvenile starfish. This larval dispersal allows for wide colonization, meaning outbreaks can occur hundreds of kilometers from the original spawning site. Outbreaks, in fact, are a growing concern across many reef systems. While crown-of-thorns starfish are native and play a role in reef ecology, controlling fast-growing coral species and maintaining diversity, population explosions turn them from natural participants into ecological threats. Scientists believe several factors contribute to these outbreaks: overfishing of natural predators, nutrient runoff from agriculture increasing larval survival, and climate-induced stress on coral systems. The result is a perfect storm: more food, fewer threats, and longer windows for spawning and growth. Efforts to control populations are labor-intensive and costly. Divers manually inject individual starfish with bile salts or other substances to kill them on site. In some regions, collection efforts are followed by incineration or deep water disposal to prevent regrowth. Robotic systems have even been developed to automate identification and injection, but none have yet scaled to meet the vast area of at-risk reefs. Natural predators like the giant triton snail are sometimes introduced in controlled areas, but breeding and sustaining these predators is another challenge entirely. Despite its harmful reputation, the crown of thorns is a product of its environment, not an invader in the invasive species sense. It evolved in parallel with coral reefs and has always been part of the marine food web. Its ability to consume fast-growing corals can allow slower, more diverse species to gain footholds. It is only when balance is disrupted, when too many survive too quickly, that its role becomes destructive. The physical adaptations of this starfish are themselves worthy of study. The spines, while visually prominent, are supported by a tough dermis laced with saponins, chemical compounds that deter predation through both taste and toxicity. Its movement, though slow, is coordinated across thousands of tiny tube feet, operated through a hydraulic system called the water vascular system. Each arm is independently capable of sensing and reacting to touch, chemical cues, and light, making the starfish's awareness surprisingly complex despite the absence of a centralized brain. In fact, research has shown that these animals can exhibit decision-making behavior, changing course when encountering obstacles or responding to cues from other starfish nearby. In the broader context of reef ecosystems, the crown-of-thorns is a reminder of the fragility of equilibrium. Coral reefs are among the most productive and biodiverse ecosystems on Earth, but they're also among the most vulnerable. When a single species gains an upper hand, through no fault of its own but through cascading human impacts, the effects are widespread. Coral cover declines, fish communities are altered, and the structural complexity that supports reef life is diminished. The crown-of-thorns, armored and toxic, simply follows the path made easier by these imbalances. Observing one in motion offers no spectacle. There is no flash, no chase, no dramatic moment of strike. But in time-lapse, the devastation becomes visible. Where it crawls, coral bleaches to white, then collapses. Fish scatter, searching for food elsewhere. Algae colonizes the bare skeletons, and the reef, once vivid and alive, loses texture, shape, and color. Not because of storm or heat wave, but because of an invertebrate no larger than a dinner plate, whose spiked silhouette is all but indistinguishable from the rubble it leaves behind. The crown-of-thorns starfish is not a villain by design. It is not malevolent, nor is it careless. It simply feeds, defends, and survives, like any organism shaped by its environment. But as human activity reshapes that environment, animals like this starfish find opportunity where others decline. And in the ever-changing story of the reef, the slow crawl of a venomous armored feeder can become one of the most significant forces of change. In the shallow lagoons and coral gardens of the Indo-Pacific, where sunlight flickers like a net across the seabed and every crevice is a theater of movement, a small, unassuming fish paddles along with a comically awkward grace. Its body is stubby and oval-shaped, with tiny fins that flutter more than propel, and large protruding eyes that rotate independently, giving it a perpetually curious expression. This is the pufferfish, and while it might not look threatening, few animals in the ocean are more deceptively dangerous. Pufferfish do not rely on speed or stealth. Their movements are deliberate, almost lazy, as they cruise close to the substrate, nibbling on coral fragments, algae, mollusks, or crustaceans with their parrot-like beak. Their fused teeth form a powerful jaw that can crack the shells of snails or even crush crab claws, making them surprisingly effective feeders despite their cartoonish appearance. But feeding is only part of their story. The pufferfish has built its evolutionary legacy not around what it eats, but what tries to eat it. When threatened, the pufferfish inflates itself by rapidly ingesting water into a specialized, highly elastic stomach. In seconds, it can swell to several times its original size, becoming a spiked, balloon-like sphere that is difficult for predators to swallow and nearly impossible to bite. For many species, this inflation is also accompanied by the erection of sharp dermal spines that lay flat when the fish is relaxed but protrude outward when inflated. These spines aren't venomous, but they serve as a secondary line of defense, a physical deterrent to complement the chemical one hiding inside. Because the true danger of the pufferfish doesn't lie in its ability to puff up. It lies in what's inside. Most species carry a powerful neurotoxin called tetrodotoxin, a substance more than 1,000 times more toxic than cyanide. The toxin is concentrated in various organs, primarily the liver, ovaries, and skin. But in some species, even the muscle tissue can be lethal. Tetrodotoxin works by blocking sodium channels in nerve cells, which halts electrical signaling. Within minutes of exposure, muscles become paralyzed, including the diaphragm, leading to respiratory failure and death by asphyxiation. There is no known antidote. What's remarkable is that the pufferfish itself is unaffected by this toxin. Its own nervous system is resistant, allowing it to harbor immense quantities of tetrodotoxin without suffering any ill effects. In fact, pufferfish do not produce the toxin themselves. The current understanding is that the toxin originates from symbiotic bacteria, likely of the Pseudomonas and Vibrio genera, which the fish accumulate and concentrate through their diet. This means that pufferfish raised in captivity and fed non-toxic diets are often non-toxic themselves, a detail that has proven critical for aquaculture and food safety. And yet, despite this threat, some predators still risk it. Tiger sharks have been observed preying on pufferfish, possibly having developed a tolerance to the toxin, or perhaps targeting the less poisonous species. Sea snakes, known for their own potent venom, occasionally take the gamble. Even humans, inexplicably, have made a delicacy of pufferfish in the form of fugu, a Japanese dish prepared by specially licensed chefs trained to remove the toxic parts with surgical precision. The margin for error is so thin that a single mistake can and has led to fatal consequences. But the dish remains legal, revered and mysterious, a culinary thrill that walks the line between prestige and poison. Pufferfish come in a wide variety of species. Over 120 have been identified, ranging from the tiny dwarf puffers of freshwater streams to large ocean-dwelling species over 1/2 meter in length. Some are boldly patterned with bright stripes and spots, signaling danger with aposematic coloration. Others blend seamlessly into their surroundings, relying on camouflage until the moment they need to inflate. Some species can hover in place like a helicopter, using their pectoral fins to adjust position with precision, allowing them to investigate their environment with surprising agility. But even beyond their well-known defense, pufferfish have exhibited behaviors that suggest a level of complexity often overlooked. In Japan's Ryukyu Islands, male white-spotted pufferfish have been observed creating elaborate symmetrical circular nests in the sand, up to 2 meters in diameter, to attract mates. These nests are sculpted with precise ridges and valleys that enhance water flow and trap fine sediment, creating an ideal environment for eggs. No other fish is known to build such complex symmetrical structures purely for reproductive purposes, and the behavior was only documented in recent decades, despite the fish itself being known for much longer. Defensive inflation, however, is costly. The process of puffing up requires energy and water regulation, and after deflation, the fish is sluggish and vulnerable for several minutes. In captivity, repeated inflation can be fatal due to stress and air ingestion if the fish inflates with air rather than water. In the wild, it's a gamble the pufferfish makes only when cornered. Most of the time, its first line of defense is avoidance, using camouflage, retreating into crevices, or simply remaining motionless to avoid detection. Interestingly, while tetrodotoxin is an effective deterrent, it is also a chemical signal. Some marine animals, including certain flatworms and sea slugs, have been observed consuming pufferfish and repurposing the toxin for their own defense, a process known as toxin sequestration. In nature, poison is rarely wasted. It becomes part of a larger arms race, passing from prey to predator, shaping behavior and survival strategies in increasingly intricate ways. The evolutionary payoff for the pufferfish is clear. With few natural predators and highly effective defenses, many species are long-lived and widely distributed. Their slow movements and relaxed posture reflect this confidence. They do not need to flee, they simply need to be noticed, then avoided. And yet, they are not immune to human pressures. Overfishing, habitat loss, and collection for the aquarium trade have threatened some populations, especially in regions where reef health is declining. Their role in the ecosystem, as both predator of hard-shelled invertebrates and prey for a select few resistant hunters, remains important, even if understated. Swimming beside one in the wild, the pufferfish rarely seems concerned. It may rotate its eyes to track you, tilt slightly to get a better view, or paddle gently away into the coral. It does not flee. It does not threaten. But its defenses are always present, just beneath the skin, silent and potent. The illusion of harmlessness is part of its protection. The true weapon is not visible until provoked, and even then the inflation is only a signal. The real danger lies in the cells you can't see, in the microscopic molecules that have stopped the hearts of animals, sharks, and even humans. In a sea filled with teeth and speed, the pufferfish chose a different path. It armored itself from within, trusted its signal to warn the wise, and left the rest to caution or consequence. It is not the fastest, the strongest, or the smartest, but it doesn't need to be. In its quiet, bloated way, it rewrote the rules of survival, not by overpowering the ocean, but by convincing it to stay away. Along the seafloor, where sunlight filters through sediment and water presses down with steady weight, movement often blends with the stillness of the environment. In this muted, silt-heavy zone, nestled between scattered rubble, coral fragments, and slow-moving life forms, the sea cucumber makes its way across the substrate at a speed only marginally faster than the rate of erosion. It looks more like a discarded sausage or a bloated, misshapen boot than an animal, and for good reason. This member of the echinoderm family bears little resemblance to its spiny, symmetrical cousins like sea stars and urchins. Yet beneath its gelatinous, leathery surface lies one of the ocean's strangest and most effective defense systems, one that involves no claws, no speed, and no stinger. Just pressure, patience, and a violent ejection of its own internal organs. The sea cucumber moves using rows of tube feet powered by hydraulic pressure, gripping the sand in tiny waves of contraction. Its body is a muscular, flexible cylinder, covered in textured skin that may be smooth or bristled depending on species. Many are dull in color, gray, brown, olive, designed to match the muted palette of the benthic zone. Others display mottled patterns or faint spots that help them vanish into their surroundings. Their camouflage isn't designed to deceive the eye like a cuttlefish or a scorpionfish. Rather, it works on the principle of visual boredom. They are so dull, so unremarkable, that predators often overlook them entirely. But when they are noticed, when something probes too closely or bites too hard, the sea cucumber becomes a different kind of animal. Some species engage a tactic so startling and extreme that it seems almost fictional. They rupture part of their own body wall and eject sticky, thread-like filaments from the rear end of their digestive tract. These structures, known as Cuvierian tubules, expand rapidly in seawater, unfurling into tangled cords that adhere to the predator's body and entangle its mouth or limbs. In many species, these threads are laced with toxic chemicals, most notably saponins, which are soap-like compounds that can disrupt cell membranes and irritate the tissues of fish, crustaceans, and even humans. It is, quite literally, a weaponized regurgitation of internal anatomy designed to confuse, incapacitate, and repel. The process is not passive. The animal must contract specific muscles to force these tubules out, and in doing so it risks damage to its own internal systems. Some species take this even further, ejecting part of their stomach or intestine entirely, a dramatic form of evisceration. It's not a suicidal move. Sea cucumbers possess remarkable regenerative abilities. Within days or weeks, the lost tissue is regrown, reconstructed from reserve stem cells. The process is metabolically expensive, and the animal must remain hidden and inactive during recovery. But the trade-off is survival. In the ruthless calculations of evolution, losing your guts to avoid becoming someone else's is a net win. While this behavior garners most of the attention, the sea cucumber's biology holds many other peculiar traits. It breathes through its rear end. Water is pumped into a pair of internal structures called respiratory trees, branching organs connected to the cloaca, which double as both waste exit and ventilation chamber. This unusual system also plays a role in gas exchange and excretion, and in some cases even houses symbiotic animals. Small fish, like the pearlfish, have been known to live inside the sea cucumber's cloacal cavity, entering through the anus and using the soft tissues as both shelter and hunting ground. The relationship is often commensal, though the lines blur depending on the behavior of the guest species. Feeding is another area where form and function intersect in bizarre ways. Most sea cucumbers are deposit feeders, using feathery, mucus-coated tentacles to sift through the sand and extract organic matter from detritus. These tentacles are extensions of the water vascular system, highly mobile and capable of precise manipulation. They sweep the substrate in slow arcs, curl around food particles, and retract to deposit material into the mouth. The sand is digested for its microscopic nutrients and expelled out the other end in neat pellet-shaped casts, each one a cleaned, filtered piece of the seafloor. In doing so, sea cucumbers act as ecosystem engineers. By bioturbating the sediment, they oxygenate the seabed, promote nutrient cycling, and support the growth of microbial communities that form the foundation of the marine food web. Yet their role as cleaners doesn't spare them from threats. Crabs, triggerfish, and predatory gastropods will attack if given the chance, especially when the cucumber is caught on open sand. The evisceration response is primarily a defense against these mid-tier predators, animals that are too small to destroy the cucumber in one bite, but persistent enough to wear it down. Larger predators like rays or sharks may ignore sea cucumbers altogether, deterred by their low mobility, tough skins, and chemical defenses. And humans, for better or worse, have also developed a taste for them. Sea cucumbers are harvested in large numbers across the Indo-Pacific for their role in traditional medicine and cuisine, particularly in Chinese markets, where they are valued for their texture and purported health benefits. Known commercially as bêche de mer or trepang, the industry surrounding their collection is intense, and in many regions, overharvesting has pushed populations into decline. Some species, particularly the larger ones, are now considered vulnerable or endangered. Their slow movement and predictable habitat use make them easy to collect, and because they play such a key role in maintaining sediment health, their removal can have cascading ecological effects. Reefs and soft-bottom habitats that lose their sea cucumber populations often experience compaction, reduced oxygen flow, and increased buildup of organic waste. Ironically, the humble sea cucumber, quiet, slow, and mostly hidden, is one of the unseen custodians of the ocean floor. Even in captivity, sea cucumbers reveal new angles of behavior. They respond to changes in light and water chemistry. Some can alter their body stiffness through collagen regulation, allowing them to wedge into cracks or inflate themselves against predators. Others can autotomize specific body parts to escape predation, detaching a piece of their own anatomy to distract or confuse an attacker. This blend of physical resilience and passive-aggressive defense creates a profile unlike any other invertebrate. They are not fighters. They do not flee. Instead, they outlast and outmaneuver through biology. Watching one move through the reef is not thrilling in the traditional sense. The pace is glacial, the motion barely perceptible unless time is compressed. But over hours, its impact is visible. A clean path carved through the sand, algae scraped from rocks, sediment sifted and renewed. It is not dramatic, but it is constant. And when disturbed, that docility can vanish in a moment of biological defiance. Guts hurled into the water, threads sticking to jaws, toxins stinging eyes and gills. The sea cucumber is not a predator, nor is it prey in the traditional sense. It occupies an in-between space, vulnerable yet untouchable, sluggish yet adaptive, simple in appearance but complex in execution. Its defenses don't rely on violence but on biochemical confusion, anatomical sacrifice, and regenerative stubbornness. In a marine world filled with claws, teeth, and venom, the sea cucumber survives by turning itself inside out, by fighting not with rage or speed, but with patience and the grotesque logic of evolution. It doesn't explode in anger. It explodes to endure. In the dim corridors between coral heads and beneath wave-washed rocks, where detritus collects and the light fractures in soft, shifting bands, some of the ocean's most efficient defensive engineers go about their work in silence. The reef is a competitive landscape, crowded with predators and constantly shifting terrain. Survival often favors those with speed, stealth, or toxic brilliance. But in the case of sea urchins and bristleworms, the strategy is architectural. Their bodies are not just barriers. They are battlegrounds, shaped over millions of years to slice, sting, and stall anything bold or foolish enough to come close. The sea urchin is one of the most easily recognizable residents of the reef. Spherical, rigid, and covered in spines, it sits wedged in crevices or clings to overhangs like a dark sea mine, barely moving to the untrained eye. But beneath its radial symmetry is a coordinated system of locomotion and defense. The spines, some long and needle-like, others short and blunt, serve multiple purposes: locomotion, camouflage collection, and most significantly, deterrence. Each spine is articulated with a ball and socket joint, allowing for responsive movement. When approached, the spines pivot toward the source of disturbance, creating a living barrier that can't be bypassed without risk. Their sharpness alone is enough to deter many predators, but in several species, including the infamous diadema and echinothrix, the spines are also venomous. A simple graze can deliver burning pain, inflammation, and long-lasting tissue damage. Urchins are echinoderms, like sea cucumbers and starfish, and they share the same hydraulic tube foot system that allows slow, deliberate motion. Rows of these suction-tipped feet extend from grooves on the underside of the body, providing traction on rough surfaces and precise grip on algae-covered rocks. They feed by scraping algae, detritus, and biofilm using a specialized five-toothed structure known as Aristotle's lantern. This jaw-like apparatus can grind down coral and rock surfaces over time, contributing to the reef's physical shaping. In this way, sea urchins are both destroyers and maintainers, clearing algae that would otherwise smother corals while slowly wearing down substrate in their quest for sustenance. Yet their defensive strategies don't end with spines. In some species, like Trypnoustes and Toxopnoustes, the surface is also equipped with pedicellariae, tiny claw-like appendages scattered among the spines that can grasp, sting, and even inject venom. These microscopic structures can deter small fish or crustaceans that attempt to graze on the urchin's tissue or lay eggs among its protective cover. Some predators, like triggerfish, have developed specialized techniques to flip the urchin over and attack the vulnerable oral surface. But most reef dwellers learn quickly that the spiny exterior is more than enough reason to stay away. Urchins are not flashy, and their movement does little to capture attention, but they are persistent architects of their own safety. Some species collect pebbles, shells, or algae on their spines for camouflage, essentially dressing themselves in local debris to break up their outline and deflect attention. Others wedge themselves tightly into rock crevices during the day, emerging only at night when predation risk is lower. Even their reproductive strategy is shaped by the environment. They spawn in large synchronized events, releasing clouds of gametes into the water column to maximize fertilization and minimize individual risk. In the same habitats, crevices, rubble fields, and coral gaps, a very different creature thrives, though few would know it unless they disturb the substrate. Bristleworms, segmented polychaetes that range in size from a few millimeters to over a meter in length, are the reef's hidden crawlers. Their bodies shimmer with iridescence under light, covered in stiff, hair-like setae that give the appearance of tiny, moving brushes. These bristles are often sharp, sometimes venomous, and in many species made of calcium carbonate or silica. They can penetrate skin with ease and break off, causing irritation, inflammation, and sometimes allergic reaction. Their name is well earned, but their diversity is underestimated. Bristleworms belong to one of the most ecologically diverse classes in the ocean. Some are scavengers, others are active hunters, and many more are detritivores, playing essential roles in nutrient cycling and sediment turnover. The fireworm, a particularly notorious member of this group, is armed not only with bristles that sting, but also with chemical defenses. When disturbed, these worms flare their bristles outward in a halo of defensive spikes and release noxious compounds that irritate gills and mucous membranes. The fireworm's sting is not fatal to humans, but is often described as sharp, burning, and persistent, enough to deter most fish from repeating the mistake. Their defensive adaptations don't stop with bristles. Some bristleworms are capable of autotomy, the voluntary shedding of body segments. When grabbed by a predator or trapped beneath rubble, the worm can sever part of its body and escape, leaving behind a wriggling, distracting section that buys time for retreat. In certain species, the segments themselves can continue to move independently for minutes after detachment, creating visual confusion that mimics the behavior of decoys in more complex animals. These worms don't rely on armor or venom alone. They use illusion and regeneration as tools of survival. Even their movement is defensive. Bristleworms undulate their bodies in rhythmic waves, using parapodia lateral appendages to push against the substrate or water. This form of locomotion allows them to navigate narrow crevices, burrow into soft sediment, or anchor themselves against currents. Some species have eye spots to detect light and shadow, helping them avoid exposure. Others possess chemical receptors that allow them to detect decaying organic matter, guiding them to carrion or detritus from meters away. It's a sensory world built not around sight or speed, but around chemical gradients, vibration, and subtle shifts in water flow. And like urchins, bristleworms play an essential ecological role. By consuming waste, recycling nutrients, and aerating sediment through movement, they maintain the health of the benthic environment. Their presence indicates a functioning reef system. But when overabundant, particularly in degraded or overfed environments, they can become problematic. Certain species feed on coral polyps or compete with juvenile reef organisms for space. In this sense, they walk the line between cleaner and invader, much like the urchin whose algae-clearing habits can shift into destructive overgrazing when predator populations decline. Despite their differences in appearance and lineage, Sea urchins and bristleworms share a common theme. They are built for defense, not retreat. Their bodies serve as both habitat and hazard, and they influence their ecosystems through slow, continuous action rather than bursts of violence. Together, they represent a class of reef life that relies not on intimidation, but on deterrence. Their warning is not shouted. It is embedded in spines, bristles, acids, and unyielding body walls. To watch them move is to understand a different kind of survival. One shaped not by the chase, but by the need to endure. In the reef's chaotic balance of aggression and adaptation, the acid architects hold their ground not with teeth or speed, but with design. They build their own security, one spine, one bristle, one hidden tunnel at a time. And they remind us that in the ocean's deep and complex systems, the line between prey and unapproachable can be as thin as a hair, if that hair is made of glass and laced with venom. In the stillness of a sandy seabed, where the ocean's floor stretches out like a muted, rippling carpet, an odd shape lies half buried in sediment. It doesn't move. Its edges blend into the surrounding terrain, soft and flat, like the outline of a waterlogged pancake or a cast-off shadow. This is the hunting ground of the electric ray, a creature that defies the usual rules of predation. It doesn't rely on speed, venom, or ambush by teeth. It waits, almost still, its body camouflaged in the shifting substrate, until the moment a jolt of electricity changes everything. Electric rays, members of the family Torpedinidae, have evolved a highly specialized set of organs that allow them to generate powerful electric shocks. These organs, located on either side of their head, are derived from modified muscle cells called electrocytes. Packed in series like the cells in a battery, these electrocytes produce electricity through ion exchange and membrane polarization. When discharged simultaneously, they can create bursts of up to 220 volts in some species, enough to stun small prey instantly or deliver a painful surprise to a curious predator. What makes this mechanism even more remarkable is its repeatability. Unlike a jellyfish's one-time use nematocysts or a venom gland that needs time to replenish, electric rays can recharge and fire again within seconds. The ray's body is disc-shaped, soft-edged, and deceptively docile in appearance. Some species, like Torpedo nobiliana in the Atlantic, can weigh over 90 kilograms and reach nearly a meter in width, while others are small enough to fit in a diver's hand. Their dorsal side often bears mottled colors, grays, browns, or pale yellows, blending perfectly with the seabed, while their underside is lighter, designed for camouflage when viewed from below. Their eyes are small and often set high on the head, offering only a limited field of vision. But they don't need precision optics. Electric rays are ambush predators, not pursuit hunters, and their senses are tuned to vibration, scent, and the minute electrical signals emitted by living things. Their preferred method of hunting is surprisingly patient. Lying still beneath a layer of sand or silt, the ray waits for a fish, crustacean, or cephalopod to come close. When the moment is right, the ray springs into action, not with a chase, but with a full-body twitch that presses the target against its underside. Then, with a muscular contraction, it discharges electricity directly into the prey's body, shocking muscles into paralysis and overriding the nervous system. The ray then envelopes its victim with the sides of its body, much like a blanket, and slowly maneuvers the limp catch into its mouth using suction. There is no blood, no torn scales, no violent struggle, just a flash of invisible power, and a moment later, a disappearance. In more open water species, electric rays may swim along the bottom in short, deliberate pulses, propelling themselves with their muscular tails and broad, undulating fins. Their movement is slow but deliberate, low energy, calculated. They are not built for sustained speed. Their large pectoral fins form the disc of the body, while the tail, often thick and relatively short, contains the caudal fin and the musculature needed to deliver short bursts of propulsion. Unlike stingrays, electric rays do not have venomous barbs or whip-like tails. Their weapon is internal, and it leaves no visible trace. Interestingly, the electrical discharge serves a dual function. Beyond disabling prey, it also acts as a defensive deterrent. Potential predators, such as sharks, large bony fish, or even marine mammals, may approach the electric ray out of curiosity or hunger, only to receive a sudden, intense jolt. In many cases, this is enough to drive them off. The unpredictability of the shock makes the ray an unattractive target. Not only is it difficult to swallow due to its bulk and slippery surface, but the added risk of being stunned mid-attack encourages predators to choose easier meals. But perhaps most fascinating is the degree of control the ray has over its electrical output. It can modulate the strength and duration of each shock depending on the size and type of target. Smaller prey may receive a quick pulse, while larger threats get the full discharge. This control is neurologically regulated, allowing for a more strategic use of energy. Electricity is costly to generate, metabolically speaking, and the ray must balance its use of this weapon with the need for rest and replenishment. This has led to a behavior profile defined by patience and precision, traits that have allowed the ray to remain evolutionarily successful for tens of millions of years. Electric rays are found in temperate and tropical seas across the globe, with different species adapted to specific niches. Some prefer the muddy estuaries near shorelines, others the sandy flats of coral reefs, or the deeper, cooler waters of the continental shelf. They are generally solitary, and many are nocturnal, choosing to hunt at night when prey is more active and the risk of predation is lower. During daylight hours, they often bury themselves almost completely, with only the eyes and spiracles visible. Two tiny holes used for drawing water over the gills, while the rest of the body remains still. The role of the electric ray in marine ecosystems is complex. As mid-level predators, they help regulate populations of smaller fish and invertebrates. But they are also prey for larger animals, and increasingly for humans. In some parts of the world, electric rays are caught as bycatch in trawl nets, or targeted for their meat and cartilage. While not commercially valuable on a large scale, overfishing and habitat degradation are known to impact their numbers. In addition, electric rays are of interest to biomedical researchers for their unique neuromuscular systems and the clarity with which their electrocytes transmit signals, features that have made them valuable models for understanding bioelectricity in vertebrates. Historically, their shocking capabilities even shaped human medicine. Ancient Greeks, including the physician Scribonius Largus, documented the use of electric fish to treat ailments such as gout and headaches, placing the live animals on the affected body part to induce numbing. While crude, this early electrotherapy was based on the correct assumption that electrical signals could influence pain pathways. Today, few divers or snorkelers ever encounter an electric ray in the wild. Their cryptic behavior and preference for low-traffic areas make them easy to overlook. But for those who do see one, often by accident while swimming close to the bottom, the experience is unforgettable. A bump, a flicker of movement, and sometimes a jolt strong enough to contract muscles or knock equipment loose. It's not an act of aggression. It's a measured, precise tool used in the language of survival. The electric ray does not roar, sting, or chase. It doesn't dazzle with color or speed. It waits. It calculates. And when the moment comes, it disrupts the rules of underwater conflict with a force that bypasses the body entirely, targeting the nerves, the impulses, the core of action itself. It is not just a hunter. It is a biological power grid wrapped in silence. And in the often chaotic game of predator and prey, that makes it one of the ocean's most quietly commanding forces. Just beneath the surface, where sunbeams scatter into golden shards and reefs rise in jagged bursts of color, a strange silhouette drifts into view. The water is clear, the coral vibrant, the fish abundant, but all of them keep a respectful distance from the lone figure gliding between them. Its shape is unlike anything else in the scene, elongated and theatrical, festooned with long, fluttering fins that fan outward like feathers caught in a current. This is the lionfish, and its motion tells a story more clearly than any pattern ever could. Stay back. Its appearance borders on ornamental. Striped in rich contrasts of white, brown, and reddish maroon, the lionfish almost seems designed for spectacle. But those patterns aren't for display, they are warnings. Its delicate-looking fins are lined with sharp, needle-like spines, and those spines are more than just physical weapons. Along their length, venom glands sit ready, filled with a complex cocktail of proteins designed to inflict intense pain, swelling, and tissue damage. In humans, a sting from a lionfish may not be fatal, but it is memorable. The pain radiates through the limb, often described as burning, throbbing, and persistently deep. For many of the reef's predators, one close encounter is enough to instill a lasting lesson. The lionfish doesn't rush or flee. It has no need to. Its movement is deliberate. Slow fin beats pushing it forward like a slow-motion dancer in water. It glides close to the reef, its pectoral fins splayed wide like a curtain, herding small fish into corners or crevices. Then, with a sudden lunge, it opens its jaws with startling speed and creates a vacuum that sucks prey inward. The strike is silent and precise. One moment the prey is hovering, darting between coral branches, and the next it's gone. There is no chase, no thrashing, just a calculated approach and a disappearance. Lionfish are ambush predators by design, and their weaponry isn't just for defense. The venomous spines allow them to corner prey without competition, while their elaborate appearance disrupts the silhouettes that smaller fish recognize as danger. With few natural predators in some regions, especially in the Western Atlantic and Caribbean where lionfish have become invasive, they dominate reef corners with unsettling efficiency. A single lionfish can reduce native juvenile fish populations by up to 80% in a matter of weeks. Their stomachs have been found to contain more than 50 prey items at a time, and they feed during both day and night, unlike many ambush hunters that rely solely on low light. This invasive success, however, is not universal. In their native Indo-Pacific range, lionfish are part of a more balanced ecosystem. There, larger predators such as groupers and sharks occasionally include them in their diets, and prey fish have evolved to recognize their patterns and movements. But in areas where lionfish have been introduced, accidentally or through aquarium releases, the reef community has no such defenses. The result is a silent but dramatic restructuring of food webs, where native fish numbers dwindle and coral health declines due to the loss of grazers like wrasses and damselfish. Lionfish are not a single species but a group, with terroir volitans and terroir miles being the most widespread and notorious. Both species share the characteristic flamboyant fins, venomous rays, and broad dietary preferences that make them adaptable to a wide range of environments, from shallow lagoons to deeper reefs and even brackish estuaries. They tolerate a wide range of salinities and temperatures, making them remarkably resilient as climate change alters the boundaries of many marine habitats. Yet for all their danger, lionfish remain fragile in some ways. Their bodies are soft, and without their spines, they are vulnerable to crushing jaws. When approached from behind, without the barrier of their outstretched rays, they are not invincible. Spearfishers, recognizing this weakness, have turned lionfish hunting into a regional conservation strategy in parts of the Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico. Organized derbies, restaurant incentives and culinary campaigns have emerged to encourage the removal of lionfish from non-native waters. Their white, mild-flavored flesh is safe to eat when properly prepared, as the venom resides only in the spines and not the muscle tissue. Ironically, the predator has become the prey, one dish at a time. Still, the removal effort faces logistical limitations. Lionfish often inhabit deeper reefs, beyond safe freediving range, and they do not respond to baited traps or lines. They are solitary and dispersed, not schooling or aggregating in a way that allows for mass removal. Divers can make a difference on heavily trafficked reefs, but the broader impact remains uneven. In remote or less visited areas, lionfish continue to spread unchecked, impacting juvenile fish communities and threatening the ecological stability of already stressed reefs. What makes lionfish uniquely problematic isn't just their venom or their gluttony. It's their combination of traits: slow, stealthy movement that avoids detection, a feeding strategy that doesn't rely on speed or surprise, and a chemical defense that few animals dare to test twice. They are generalists in a world of specialists, capable of adjusting their diet, habitat, and behavior in response to local conditions. And they reproduce with remarkable efficiency. Females can release egg clusters every few days, floating gelatinous orbs that drift with the current and hatch in open water. These larvae are pelagic, capable of dispersing over great distances before settling on a new reef. This reproductive engine drives their invasion as surely as their venom defends it. In the grand scheme of the ocean, lionfish are not the apex predator, nor are they the most fearsome, but they are among the most disruptive. A reminder that sometimes the most dangerous animals are not those with the largest teeth or the fastest strikes, but those that go unnoticed until the damage is done. They don't roar or rush, they hover. They sift through the living architecture of the reef like a slow-burning flame, leaving gaps in the web of life that are hard to refill. Observing one up close reveals the full contradiction. The long trailing rays wave gently in the current like underwater plumage, elegant and almost meditative. But look closer, and the hidden reality becomes clear. A body armed with hypodermic spines, a mouth that vacuums with lethal speed, and an appetite that respects neither scarcity nor species. The lionfish is not just a decorated reef dweller, it is an opportunist engineered for quiet dominance, moving with the confidence of an animal that knows few will dare challenge it. In ecosystems that thrive on balance, its presence tilts the scale in silence, not with sudden violence, but with calculated consumption, immune to warning and immune to consequence. The fire swimmer doesn't chase its name, it earns it, one paralyzed fin at a time. In the sunlit shallows of tropical reefs, where the water is warm and the coral blooms in outcrops and spires, the eye is naturally drawn to the colorful, the active, the bold. Fish dart in and out of crevices. Crabs shuffle across rubble. Soft corals wave in the surge. But tucked into this shifting world of motion and color are some of the most exquisitely strange creatures on the reef. Nudibranchs. Their movement is barely perceptible, a slow gliding crawl over rock and sponge. Yet their appearance is anything but forgettable. Draped in electric blues, fire reds, fluorescent purples and polka dot yellows, nudibranchs look less like sea slugs and more like the ocean's version of avant-garde artwork. But these flamboyant designs serve a purpose far beyond aesthetics. They are warnings, living billboards that say in no uncertain terms, "Do not touch." Nudibranchs are a type of gastropod related to snails and slugs, but unlike their shelled cousins, they shed that protective housing after their larval stage. What they lose in armor, they gain in chemistry. These soft-bodied mollusks have evolved one of the most advanced chemical defense systems in the animal kingdom. They are specialists not just in eating toxic prey, but in hijacking the defenses of those prey and incorporating them directly into their own bodies. Sponges, hydroids, anemones, and even other nudibranchs serve as their targets. Organisms that themselves produce or store toxins, often for their own protection. But nudibranchs aren't harmed by these poisons. Instead, through specialized digestive systems, they extract, concentrate and relocate these chemicals to specific tissues, especially along the outer body margins, where any would-be predator would first make contact. The process is precise. When feeding on cnidarians like hydroids or anemones, nudibranchs can ingest entire stinging cells, nematocysts, without triggering them. These cells pass through the gut unharmed and are then transported to outgrowths called serrata along the nudibranch's back, where they remain functional. In effect, the nudibranch becomes a mobile extension of its prey's defense, carrying a ready-made arsenal of microscopic harpoons primed to fire. Other species go further, extracting toxins from sponges and modifying them chemically into compounds not found in the prey at all. These new molecules are stored in tissues that predators learn, sometimes painfully, not to sample again. And predators do learn. Reef fish may sample a nudibranch once, only to spit it out immediately and remember the shape, color, and even movement patterns of that species for future avoidance. Some nudibranchs are so toxic that even crabs, which typically feed on a wide range of invertebrates, will walk around them without investigating. Their vivid colors are not camouflage. They are a language of threat, aposematism, written in hues that only the foolhardy ignore. But the most remarkable aspect of nudibranch behavior is not just their ability to recycle or repurpose toxins. It's their level of specialization. Many species are narrowly adapted to feed on a single type of prey. Some eat only one genus of sponge. Others feed exclusively on the eggs of other nudibranchs. This specialization is mirrored in their morphology. Flat, ribbon-like species slither across wide surfaces, grazing on encrusting sponge. Branched, serrata-covered types are built for feeding on hydroid colonies. The structure of their jaws, the arrangement of their radula, the chitinous ribbon used to rasp food, all reflect what and how they feed. Sponge-feeding nudibranchs in particular play a crucial role in the reef. Sponges are dominant filter feeders, drawing in water to extract bacteria and microscopic nutrients. Some produce potent secondary metabolites, chemical byproducts that deter grazing. These toxins are often powerful enough to deter even vertebrates, and some have shown promise as anti-cancer or antibiotic agents in laboratory research. Yet nudibranchs cut right through these defenses, not only tolerating the toxins but refining them for their own use. It's a form of weaponized digestion. The nudibranch eats, digests, extracts, and arms itself using the very molecules that were meant to keep it at bay. Not all nudibranchs rely on toxins alone. Some use mimicry, blending in with the very sponges or corals they feed on. matching color and texture so precisely that they disappear from view even under close inspection. Others, like the leaf-like Elysia species, engage in kleptoplasty, the stealing of chloroplasts from algae. These chloroplasts are incorporated into the nudibranch's own tissues, allowing it to photosynthesize like a plant. For days or even weeks, the animal can survive on light alone, supplementing its energy intake with solar power. It's a strategy that borders on science fiction, an animal turning sunlight into sustenance using stolen parts of its prey. In movement, nudibranchs are slow and seemingly vulnerable. They glide using a muscular foot that secretes mucus for traction, leaving behind a faint trail as they crawl across rock or coral. Some species are active hunters, moving with surprising purpose toward colonies of hydroids or tunicates. Others are more passive, feeding as they go, processing vast stretches of sponge tissue in long, looping roots. Reproduction is also notable. Nudibranchs are hermaphrodites. Each individual carries both male and female reproductive organs, and they mate by aligning head to tail and exchanging sperm simultaneously. After mating, they lay ribbon-like strands of eggs, often coiled in elegant spirals on the surface of their prey or substrate. These egg ribbons are themselves often laced with defensive chemicals, discouraging other animals from feeding on the next generation. Despite their visual brilliance and scientific value, nudibranchs are elusive to many casual divers. Their size, often only a few centimeters, and their preference for crevices or underhangs make them easy to overlook. But for those who search closely, the reef reveals its hidden engineers. Slowly moving across the surface of the world, they reshape in subtle ways. Their role as chemical recyclers, toxin repurposers, and prey specialists makes them integral to the reef's balance. And their bodies, soft, bright, and alive with borrowed defenses, tell a story of evolution not through force, but finesse. There is a quiet irony in their success. Nudibranchs are some of the most defenseless-looking animals in the sea. They lack shells, claws, speed, or size. But by understanding their environment at a chemical level, by mastering the molecules of the organisms around them, they have become untouchable. Their bodies are laboratories in motion, blending ingestion with transformation, digestion with defense. Each one a walking experiment in what nature can do with soft tissue and smart strategy. To watch one feed is to see science in action. Molecule meets molecule, predator meets poison, and somehow the poison becomes armor. They don't need to fight. They don't even need to hide. They only need to taste what the reef provides and let their bodies do the rest. In a world of claws and jaws, the nudibranch survives by doing what most predators never consider. It eats its enemies and turns them into protection. And then, brightly dressed and slowly gliding, it moves on to do it again. Beneath the mirror of the sea, in the fluid architecture of coral reefs and sand plains, lies a world shaped not only by who hunts fastest or grows largest, but by who is hardest to kill. In these submerged battlegrounds, survival is not just a contest of muscle or teeth. It is an ongoing arms race of innovation, where the most successful creatures aren't necessarily the most aggressive, but the most prepared. And nowhere is that more evident than in the evolution of marine defense, a living arsenal built from spines, venom, mucus, camouflage, and chemical warfare so intricate and widespread that it forces predators to pause, evaluate, and often retreat. The reef is not a place of constant open conflict. It's a system of calculated restraint, of animals constantly weighing risk versus reward. One wrong bite can paralyze, sting, or blind. A poorly chosen snack might taste like acid, explode in a tangle of toxic threads, or be too spiny to swallow. Defensive adaptations in marine life don't just stop attacks. They shape behavior, interactions, and even evolutionary paths. They create hesitation in hunters and forge entire ecosystems around the presence or absence of risk. Some defenses are mechanical, rooted in shape and texture. Sea urchins, for example, rely on their skeletal symmetry and dense array of spines to create an almost perfect defense perimeter. Their spines aren't just barriers, they're mobile, flexible, and in some species tipped with venom that inflames and incapacitates. Their cousins, the bristleworms, defend themselves with glass-like hairs that lodge in the skin of would-be predators, breaking off and delivering sharp reminders that soft-bodied does not mean vulnerable. The pufferfish, in a different strategy altogether, transforms from prey to predicament in seconds, expanding into a spiny sphere while hiding one of the ocean's most potent toxins within its tissues. Its tetrodotoxin is so effective that even apex predators like sharks avoid them. Defense in these species isn't a last resort. It's a constant presence, written into their very anatomy. Chemical defenses are even more diverse, often operating at levels invisible to the eye. The crown-of-thorns starfish bristles with venomous spines that not only deter contact, but can cause systemic symptoms in humans and fish alike. Lionfish, with their elaborate fin rays, advertise their venom with bold stripes, an honest warning to all but the hungriest predators. But it is in the soft-bodied creatures, those without the luxury of armor or speed, that the most complex chemical defenses have evolved. Nudibranchs exemplify this approach, consuming toxic prey like sponges or hydroids and storing their chemical defenses for their own use. Some even appropriate stinging cells directly from their prey, relocating them to exposed tissues where they remain active, repurposed into their own living shield. The result is a remarkable form of biological recycling, where an animal weaponizes its food, gaining protection not by what it can do, but by what it can process and retain. Other species go further still, using deception rather than deterrence. The mimic octopus impersonates venomous lionfish or sea snakes, deterring predators through bluff. Scorpionfish rely on perfect camouflage until the last possible moment, then deliver a venomous sting when touched. Cuttlefish vanish in a cloud of ink, while cone snails, slow, shelled, and seemingly harmless, fire harpoon-like teeth laced with paralyzing toxins. These are not random adaptations. They are precise tools, evolved over millions of years to fill every gap in the predator-prey interaction. Together, they make the ocean not just a place of violence, but a landscape of threat management, avoidance, and biological chess. Importantly, these defenses reshape the behavior of predators as much as they shape the bodies of prey. Reef predators, groupers, snappers, moray eels must learn caution early. Juvenile fish often follow adult models, observing what can and cannot be eaten. One bad encounter with a venomous lionfish or a distasteful nudibranch may influence a lifetime of hunting choices. Some species, like the triggerfish, have evolved specialized behaviors to bypass defenses. They flip sea urchins to expose the vulnerable underside or spit water jets to dislodge bristleworms from burrows. Predators that can't innovate or remember suffer. Those that can adapt thrive. In this way, defensive adaptations don't just protect, they demand learning, push innovation, and foster ecological complexity. The presence of these weapons also impacts reproduction, territory, and even community structure. Animals with potent defenses can afford to be more conspicuous, more solitary, or more slow-moving because their risk of predation is reduced. They do not need to hide constantly or move quickly. Others, like electric rays, lie buried and still, conserving energy and striking only when necessary with a weapon that leaves no trace, only a sudden muscle-jolting burst of electricity. These behaviors create spatial niches on the reef, dividing space not by aggression, but by who can afford to exist where and how safely. On a broader scale, defensive evolution has a cascading effect on marine biodiversity. Toxins developed in one species may spur detoxification pathways in another. Camouflage used by one animal may trigger visual acuity in its predators. Venoms may spark immunity or resistance. This evolutionary arms race doesn't always end in a winner. More often, it ends in standoff, an equilibrium where predator and prey coexist in a tension defined by caution and risk, rather than constant killing. The reef doesn't erupt in conflict every second. Instead, it simmers in a balance of threat, color, warning, and deterrence. And in that balance, diversity thrives. Even humans, long removed from these ecological negotiations, have found themselves entangled in this biological arsenal. The chemicals derived from sponge-eating nudibranchs, the tetrodotoxin in pufferfish, and the bioelectrical systems of rays and eels have all informed medical research, neurological studies, and toxinology. Marine organisms have become laboratories of natural innovation, yielding molecules that block pain, treat disease, or influence our understanding of nerve and muscle function. These animals defend themselves not only from predators, but inadvertently from human indifference. Their biology becomes their ambassador, their survival strategy, our inspiration. Yet this arsenal, for all its elegance, is fragile. The loss of a single prey species can collapse the survival strategy of a specialist nudibranch. Overfishing of urchin predators can lead to grazing outbreaks that decimate coral cover. Invasive species like lionfish can unbalance entire food webs, protected by venom in regions where no natural predators have yet adapted. The ocean's defensive tapestry is tightly woven, but it is not indestructible. And the creatures that defend themselves best are often the most vulnerable to environmental change. Not because of weakness, but because their strategies are too refined, too specialized, to survive in a collapsing ecosystem. Ultimately, the ocean's arsenal tells a deeper story about life below the surface. It reveals a world where power is measured not just in jaws or speed, but in innovation, resilience, and biochemical wit. Where the smallest creatures use chemistry as armor, and where even the softest body can outlast the sharpest tooth. Here, evolution doesn't simply select for aggression, it selects for endurance, for the ability to survive in a world where every bite comes with consequences and every encounter demands calculation. In this world, predators don't just hunt, they hesitate. They weigh the cost. They remember. Because in the ocean, survival doesn't always belong to the strongest. It often belongs to the best defended.